Thank you. So I would like to thank the chairs and the reviewers for choosing this report to present. So Imaginative Intelligences are a series of participatory assemblies with creators from across Hollywood's production pipeline, executives, gig workers, creative technologists, and scholars. Over 5 participatory assemblies in LA, participants examined a central prompt: what is creative purpose at the dawn of AI? And depending on the group's makeup, each assembly coalesced around unique themes that exemplified something specific to them. For example, gig workers in session 1 chose their theme to be pain, as it related to the loss of jobs and a feeling of economic precarity, and also as what they described as the distinguishing factor between humans and models. Central to many conversations was the idea of creative purpose. How do creators maintain purpose as the value and logic behind it increasingly diminishes? Each session generated extensive qualitative material, over 30 hours of recorded conversation that, we asked for consent, which was later synthesized into a 35-page report outlining cross-industry pain points and 8 design principles to inform more equitable creative tech development. So I'm going to go over what participatory interventions in AI models currently exist. Currently, we see a lot of participatory interventions, specifically with the creative tech, with creators, articulated through a model or policy life cycle. In other words, like a way to get feedback or to fine tune. And while alignment is very useful in a practical endeavor, it differs from our work in that our intervention seeks to surface the principles to precede optimization, creation, deployment, and regulation. In short, our gatherings and report allow the region-specific community service principles to be the first mover rather than a feedback mechanism. So why Hollywood? I'm from LA, and so I saw firsthand a lot of the pain that was hitting creators. We saw the union strikes, and we also saw that arts and culture was a driver for innovation, and yet creatives themselves were not flourishing. And so we saw this sort of tension, and we thought we should go to the creators themselves. From across 3 sectors, we gathered freelancers, union reps, white-collar professionals, creative technologists, media executives, lawyers, journalists, content creators, and academics. And we tried to balance for industry focus, creative discipline, and level of experience. We also paid participants. So the assembly method, we started with this prompting question: what is the creative purpose at the dawn of AI? We had some unstructured dialogue with, then we had a blindfolded group discussion where the group sort of coalesced. And then at the end, they all sort of like landed on a theme that usually was very specific to that group. And then they decomposed this theme into 4 smaller themes and modeled that theme out in over modeling. So the central question, what is creativity at the dawn of AI? We had a question come up again and again. Do we create for the sake of creation itself because it's fundamental to who we are? Or is creativity always for something, to be seen, to inspire, to shift others, to earn a living, to master a craft? And this was sort of like an existential question to creators. Pain, as I mentioned earlier, was the theme that the gig economy landed on. Attention, fittingly, was the theme for content creators. Performance for musicians, transmission for film and TV. So I'm going to go over each of the themes and some quotes from our really rich qualitative data that we were able to gather. So the gig workers highlighted that pain is, 1, a mechanism to control AI. Pain is one lever of control over a system. You can prevent something from doing something if you dangle the threat of pain over it. If you have an autonomous agent that doesn't fear this thing, it raises the question of how to maintain control. But pain is also central to creative works and feeling meaningful or human. If an AI agent can't feel pain, how do we know that the thing that's being created is meaningful? Stream was the mixed discipline theme. Hollywood Local said streaming was the initial disruptor, AI is the scapegoat. So the idea was that streaming already blew up their business more than anything else. And then AI became the strange scapegoat. So the issue is resource distribution, and where creative labor loses value while systems are optimized for speed and scale are rewarded is a long time story for Hollywood. Then we have attention. And attention what does it mean to pay for an ethical digital space, whether through money, attention, or data? One participant imagined a future in which human-made content might be marketed like organic food. Another participant challenged that vision. If you have to pay to be in that space, then what's the point? Performance, musician, this was the theme for musicians. And so some saw AI as a tool for democratizing musical creation. One musician described how orchestral composition software expanded access to forms of music making previously limited by resources. But others noted that there's limits to this democratization and ownership of tools. The same openness that enables access was also framed as conditional, and that access depends on who controls the technology continuously. And so these were sort of like firsthand experiences from the creators themselves. Transmission. Mortality is seen as an anchor point and framing around intention and for creativity. If we're asking why do we create, the purpose might be to leave something behind. And so one participant noted, while choosing not to have biological children, their animated creations are imbued with life lessons and themes for children. Art in this framing became a way to leave something behind. And so, does an AI agent really have the same, if it's leaving something behind, to what end? So from these, we gathered some cross-cutting findings. These, I think of them as like pain points. What are the pain points that we saw again and again and again? AI accelerates output, but displaces process. While nearly 97% of participants used AI in some form, 40% do not believe it has scaled their creative output. And the role of lived experience and personalization. Participants described the long, often painful journey towards skill as the essence of artistry, building purpose and confidence into their work. And without it, AI-generated art risks feeling hollow. Almost 24% of participants noted personalization as missing from AI systems, highlighting that AI can't follow individual rhythms, allow guidance, or provide real-time feedback. Another pain point, simulation is not experience. Tactile interactions are irreplaceable. One participant said, "You say the word scrape, you can't get it out of your head. It gives me a visual of absolutely everything. Giant dump truck, just gathering it all and putting it in a landfill called AI. Creativity has edges, limits, and sometimes what you decide is not your story is every bit as important as what is your story. We have to continue to be a society that isn't scraping into one giant container, but recognizes multiple conflicting specific ideas of ourselves." Human uniqueness lies in legacy and interpretation. Legacy exists twofold and has the potential for co-option twofold, upstream and downstream. So upstream, by taking over the act of materializing a creative thought, AI can blur authorship or pull expression out of the artist's hands. And then downstream, AI-enabled remixing can transform works far beyond the creator's intention, often for profit, without credit or connection to their original meaning. And participants noted that remixing has always existed and is perhaps crucial to creation. For example, Star Wars itself was a remix, but today you can't get rich off of remixes the same way that you were able to at that time, because IP is now more tightly controlled by large players. So another insight that I think was really interesting to me is the role of artists is shifting from maker to editor, curator, or systems designer. And I think we can also see this in the job market, the way that roles are being marketed. So less specialists and more brand curated generalists. One participant said, "Okay, everyone's a DJ now. Is that a bad thing? No, people can express themselves. The people who do well are masters and true artists. They produce music, they spend a lot of time curating their brand and their message." And so I thought this was really interesting. The thing that makes someone now is more like their curated brand and not as much their technical proficiency. But this also means that the supporting ecosystem of crew jobs also shrinks in response. Creative labor is increasingly precarious and devalued. Your value as an artist is just going to go down. And they noted that while it only took one job for them to sustain their living many years ago, now they have to have 5. This one's my favorite. AI challenges the moral and economic logic of creation. AI integration and animation exemplifies this irrationality. One AI-integrated cartoon startup explained their process meant that they could create, quote, 80% faster and 90% cheaper than industry norms. And so given these metrics, why would you create? And this is sort of an existential question for artists. Generative AI is the latest development in a trend towards a frictionless world. Rideshare ordering, doom scrolling, and lack of physical buttons all represent this. But the idea of positive friction came to mind for artists and emerged as a solution. Small pauses, tactile feedback, and deliberate steps in a process can improve human AI interactions and even lead to a healthier, more meaningful engagement. So participants asked, and we asked technologists, how can we re-ingrain friction? AI has the power to randomize or homogenize. Machine intelligence is systemic, not sentient. And I think these are some of the narratives we're seeing around AI specifically. And so artists mention, slop is a global junkyard. Even with very training data, generative AI all trends towards sameness. And yet one creative technologist mentioned that randomness excites them. Quote, when AI art is good, it's because it's so blank weird. I feel like a lot of people only see very, very sterile versions of AI art, but when you get deep in it and you're not on the censored models, the stuff coming out of there is just so far beyond what a person would make. It can be terrifying. So from these insights, we created 8 design principles to address them. Build for process, not just output. Encourage randomness and glitchiness. Keep friction in the creative flow. Protect lineage and give credit. Put human purpose at the center. Make AI transparent and conversational. Value deliberate slowness and depth. Design for the whole creative ecosystem. And so these were our design principles that sort of emerged as a way to address these pain points, and were supported either explicitly or implicitly by all of the qualitative data that we gathered. Impact and where we see this going. So policy influence, this was already cited in a California backgrounder for the Senate Judiciary proceeding on AI and copyright. Preemptive participatory discussions. As I mentioned earlier, we're hoping to bring local arts communities into conversations with technologists early, beyond user research or model development constraints. So can this be like a sort of first mover as a design principle rather than feedback or aligning? Community voice, articulate key points from respective community on specific pain points, hopes, and opportunities as a result of integration. And just provide a source of rich textual data, be a touch point for legislators and civil society on the respective communities' needs and interaction with AI with respect to labor, use, and human-in-the-loop processes. So what's next? We did this in Hollywood, and we're actually doing a series of assemblies in India as well, and our first one is actually today at the G5A, and we're going to do a series of them, of these assemblies with India's local film community. Thank you.